We spend our whole lives trying not to be wrong, right? But what if I told you that in science, being wrong, I mean spectacularly wrong, can sometimes be way more valuable than being right? It sounds nuts, I know, but let's get into it. So that leads to a really important question, one we're all wrestling with today. Is all scientific disagreement the same? I mean, when someone stands up and challenges the consensus, how do we know if they're the next Galileo? Or if they're just, well, holding everyone back? And you see this paradox playing out all the time. Think about it. On one hand, you've got heroes like Galileo. He defied the consensus, and now we celebrate him for it. But on the other hand, you have people today who we label deniers. They also defy the consensus, but we often see them as a threat to progress. So what gives? What's the real difference here? Okay, to get to the bottom of this, we need to go back in time. We're going to look at a tale of two absolute giants of science. It's a story about a brilliant mistake that almost took down Darwin's masterpiece. All right, picture this. It's 1863. The person to beat in physics is Lord Kelvin. I mean, this guy is a total titan, and he drops a bombshell. Using the rock-solid laws of thermodynamics, he declares that the Earth is only about 100 million years old. Period. Now, this wasn't just some number for a textbook. This was a huge problem, a direct shot at Charles Darwin's shiny new theory of evolution. See, for natural selection to work its magic, it needs, well, an insane amount of time. And Kelvin just took most of that time away. And Darwin, oh, he felt the heat big time. He actually wrote that Kelvin's claim was probably one of the gravest objections as yet advanced. You can feel the stress in those words. This wasn't a friendly debate. It was a fundamental threat to his entire life's work. So here's the kicker. Here's the big twist in the story. Lord Kelvin was dead wrong. Not just a little bit wrong, like completely, wildly off the mark. The Earth is so much older. But, and this is the key, his mistake turned out to be one of the most valuable things that could have happened to science. So you're probably asking, how on earth can being that wrong be valuable? Well, because trying to prove him wrong forced everyone to get better. Physicists had to totally rethink how the Earth's core works. Geologists had to invent brand new ways to date things, which led them to radioactive decay. Even the biologists had to sharpen their pencils and think about whether evolution could happen faster. It was a massive level up for everyone. And that story perfectly sets up the main idea for us today, what we're going to call a valuable misunderstanding. So let's really define this. What's the secret sauce that turns a regular old mistake into a major breakthrough? Okay, here's the definition. A valuable misunderstanding is basically a wrong idea, but it's a wrong idea that forces the entire scientific community to jump in and correct it. And it's through that process of correction that we end up with a much deeper understanding and sometimes totally new knowledge. This is so important to get. The magic isn't in the mistake itself. A wrong idea is just, wrong. The real value, the gold, is in the work the community does to fix it. It's like a really tough workout. The pain isn't the point. The strength you build from it is. Let me give you a contrast. There was this guy, Roger Babson, who hated gravity. He actually set up a foundation to find an anti-gravity device. Now, scientists took his money, sure, but they could totally ignore his crazy premise and just do good research. Kelvin's idea was different. It was so smart and well-argued that you couldn't just ignore it. You had to engage with it, wrestle with it, and prove it wrong with better science. But okay, there's a catch. These valuable misunderstandings, they don't stay valuable forever. They have a kind of expiration date. So what's the tipping point? When does a productive disagreement just become, well, a pointless mistake? To really get our heads around this, let's bring it into the present day and look at a really contentious topic, vaccine skepticism. Now, stay with me here. The argument is that for a while, the public's concern about vaccine safety actually worked like one of these valuable misunderstandings. The early skepticism, even the stuff based on that one really bad fraudulent study, it pushed the scientific community to launch a massive investigation to find the truth. You can see the whole life cycle laid out here. It starts with an initial concern, a question, that sparks a ton of corrective research, huge, large-scale studies. From that work, we get a new, much deeper understanding. But then you hit the final stage, expired dissent. The work has been done. The questions have been answered. At that point, clinging to the original misunderstanding isn't valuable anymore. And that brings us to a really crucial point. According to this framework, the biggest problem with science denial isn't the act of disagreeing. It's the act of clinging to an expired idea long after the massive, exhaustive corrective process has laid the question to rest. So all of this really changes how we should think about that phrase, trust the science. It's not about blindly trusting a final conclusion or a consensus. It's about trusting the process, the rigorous, messy, self-correcting system that gets us to that conclusion. Because if we just fetishize consensus, we fall into some serious traps. A consensus can sometimes just be groupthink. It makes it super hard for science to change its mind without losing public trust. And, worst of all, it totally ignores the vital role that dissent plays in catching errors. It misses the real engine of scientific progress, that whole corrective process. So let's put it this way. Trustworthy science isn't a quiet room where everyone agrees. No, not at all. It's a loud, argumentative room that has really, really good rules for figuring out who's right. It's about having strong systems for fixing mistakes. Okay, so if healthy dissent isn't the enemy, what is? What's the real threat to science today? Well, the answer might not be what you're thinking.
The argument goes like this. The biggest, most dangerous threat to science isn't denialism. It's pulling the plug. It's defunding the very institutions, the labs, the universities, the researchers that do all this crucial corrective work.
And look, this isn't some abstract idea. It's happening. The U.S. Department of Health, for instance, canceled $500 million. That's a B in funding for mRNA vaccine research. When you do that, you're not just cutting a budget. You are actively weakening the very immune system of science, the system that turns mistakes into progress. So that leaves us with a huge question to chew on. How do we build trust, not just in the clean, shiny final answer science gives us, but in the messy, argumentative, frustrating, but ultimately beautiful self-correcting process that gets us there? That really is the challenge for all of us.